at Breaking Big Blue. I'm your host, Jordan Ron, on ESPN, ESPN.com, Giants reporter, and we're here with the OTA episode. That's because we got our first look at the 2025 New York Giants. I'm basically going to unload the notebook. First, it's important to note that these are OTAs, organized team activities. They started on Tuesday. We got in on Wednesday, so we're going to see one a week. Now, as Brian Daboll noted, these are basically passing camps. It's not full pads. It's not full live contact. Offensive linemen, defensive linemen, you really can't make any big judgments, okay? Even for, anything, running backs, running game, blocking, you reserve those judgments for the summer, for training camp, for preseason, for the regular season. This is about seeing who is in what spot, right? Basically, I'm sitting there jotting down the whole time, as much as possible, what the lineups are, what kind of formations they're trying to get in, where guys are on the field. So you have an idea of where they stand in the pecking order and what their intended role is going to be. Now, things change. We're sitting here. It's the end of May. They might have an idea for a guy and then see, hey, you know what? Doesn't look like that's going to work great. So we're going to change it. Like we have a guy at right guard. You know what? We're going to need him at left tackle. The old Josh Azudu thing. Now, we'll get to the offensive line in a few minutes. There was a few notable players in different spots than we've seen them in the past. Evan Neal. But the biggest difference when you look out on the field for the 2025 Giants this spring is the quarterback position. Clearly, not even close. They have a way different quarterback room. And we kind of had an idea of how it was going to lay out. And Brian Daboll still doesn't really want to tell us exactly how it's going to play out. We'll get to that later as well. But we get to see it with our own eyes. A little bit. A little taste. We got a little taste of it. How they're going to deploy the quarterbacks this spring, this summer, maybe this season. Right? And at the top of the pecking order is Russell Wilson. He was signed to be the starter. Jameis Winston's behind him. So those are the 1 and 2. Russell Wilson took, let's say, 80% of the snaps with the first team. Jameis Winston took 80% of the snaps with the second team. Jaxson Dart took 90% of the snaps with the third team. Jaxson Dart, obviously, the first-round rookie, the future of the Giants. They sure hope. Brian Daboll's guy, Ole Miss. He's the future. Sneak him in for a few first-team reps. He got a few first-team reps in some red zone drills. 1 during the run of practice and then another 2 at the very, very end, the very 2 last plays. He had some ups and downs. Threw an interception on the last one, threw a touchdown earlier, which was a nice throw in the back of the end zone. Jalin Hyatt over a linebacker in the middle of the field. So the most notable thing that I saw from Jaxson Dart, and you kind of knew this, because if you go look at his stats, you go look at the way he played, he moves well, right? He's a guy who runs. And that to me was my number one takeaway from Jaxson Dart during practice was his mobility. He perhaps is even more mobile than I realized. And he was doing a lot of running, a lot of pulling, zone read type plays, running, scrambling. And you see that a lot with young quarterbacks too. Things are moving so fast, you're not really sure what you're seeing. So you're not exactly catching that first read, getting out of your hands super quick. Holding the ball a little bit longer at times. I think he learned a little lesson in the very last play. He rolled out right, was moving around, tried to make a throw against his body. Micah McFadden, interception. It's like one of those, hey, can't make that throw in the NFL. I remember there's a story from Peyton Manning where Peyton Manning, actually there's a video, I believe, of Peyton Manning coming off the field, and this was during the regular season as a rookie, and he's telling his coach, he just threw an interception. I could make this throw. And it was intercepted in the middle of the field. And he did it again, and I can make this throw. And he came back, I believe, the next time, and he said, guess you can't make that throw in the NFL. The NFL is a different beast. It's a different level. And Jaxson Dart's going to have to learn that, but he had some good moments, and he has ups and downs. Very small sample size we're talking about here. So making any profound judgments at this point, people that are doing that, it's foolish. They don't know what they're talking about. to the people that are just watching off videos and have no idea what they're looking at anyway. This is OTAs. Nothing, no crazy assumptions or assertions or judgments should be made off OTAs. What you see on a clip or a picture, right? You got to take it all with a grain of salt. Russell Wilson started slow, had his ups and downs. Jameis Winston also had his ups and downs. Like nobody was out there slinging it, completing all their passes, looking great. It was okay. Reminds you, and that let's preface it with this, their top offensive player, Malik Nabers, wasn't on the field. I'll get to that in 1 second. But their offense is still a work in progress. Let's be fair. The Giants' offense is still going to be a work in progress. That's, like, you can see that. This isn't going to be an explosive, great offense. Like if they're middle of the pack, I think that's a huge, huge success for this offense. Remember, 31st in the league in points last year, 29th the year before. Russell Wilson, not prime Russell Wilson we're talking about here. He's going to be the starter. He's the first-team quarterback. He got the majority of the reps. Tommy DeVito looked pretty good, but he only took three reps and then one at the very end, so 4 total. Completed his first 3. The 4th one was dropped by a running back. And let me say this about Tommy DeVito. I feel for him a little bit. You're talking about a guy who worked his way up, who grinded his way up, who last year, remember, they said, we think he could give us a spark. He could jumpstart us a little bit. To the point where they started him when they benched Daniel Jones over their $5 million backup quarterback that they signed in the offseason. And now they're like, you're the 4th stringer. You barely get any snaps. 4 reps throughout practice. Jaxson Dart's getting 3, 5, 7, 9, 12, like 14. Tommy DeVito's getting 4. And look, I get it. They drafted Jaxson Dart in the first round. You invested in this guy. You're going to give him reps. But they signed 2 veterans and drafted a guy, and now Tommy DeVito's basically buried as the 4th guy on the Giants. Little unfair, if you ask me, from a Tommy DeVito perspective. But it is what it is. This is a performance-based business, and you have to win. And the Giants have to find a way to win, and they need to get better quarterback play overall. But Tommy DeVito doesn't look like he's a huge part of their plan. He's sort of an emergency contingency, right? A contingency, an insurance plan in case, let's say, Jameis Winston or Russell Wilson get injured. Like that's what he is right now. A camp arm contingency plan. But that's the way it is. That's the Giants quarterback situation right now. It's Russell Wilson as the starter. Jameis Winston has insurance for him as the veteran in case something happens to Russell Wilson and need a veteran in the first half of the season. Jaxson Dart as the future. And Tommy DeVito as extra insurance. Stockpile as much insurance as possible, the Giants did, after what they saw happen last year. So that's the QB situation. Now, wide receiver, Malik Nabers didn't practice. Brian Daboll said he's dealing with a toe problem. They have him on a rehab plan. Toe problem from last year. Now, here's why, to me, I'm scratching my head. A little weird. He's dealing with a toe problem from last season. Giants' last game was January 7th. January 7th. It's May 28th. That's almost 5 months. No procedure, they said, no surgery. Went to the Pro Bowl, did some stuff at the Pro Bowl right after the season. And almost 5 months later, we're sitting here and he's not practicing? Interesting. Not quite sure what to make of that. Definitely something to keep an eye on, though, moving forward. Jalin Hyatt. This was one of the most notable things at Giants OTAs. Jalin Hyatt stepped into that role where Malik Nabers was, as a starting outside wide receiver alongside Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot. And Jalin Hyatt now has an opportunity again to carve himself out a role. Now, last year it was clear the Giants did not trust Jalin Hyatt. He wasn't happy with the situation. It was a disaster all the way around. He had 8 catches for 72 yards. Total non-factor. 3rd round pick, has some talent. Should never happen. 70-something yards. He's too talented to have 70-something yards. So to get him involved, to try to get something out of him, to get him in that mix, caught a touchdown pass throughout practice, looked to be moving well. Looks like he added a little bit of bulk, a little bit of muscle too. So to see Jalin Hyatt looking good, or at least even be part of the mix at this point after last year, is a positive on that front. So I did like to see that. We'll get into more of the wide receivers and kind of how they did the rotation as we move along here. Offensive line was the other big notable because you got Evan Neal, okay? Number 7 overall pick, right tackle his first 3 years. Finally, the Giants said this offseason, we're going to make the switch. Try and salvage the old Eric Flowers. Mekhi Becton, he has that size. He has the power. He's probably a better run blocker. Does he have the balance to be kind of banged around in there? Because that's what Greg Van Roten was kind of explaining. But how in the interior, things just come at you really fast. They're coming at you from all different directions. It's not so easy as some guy lining up right in front of you and go block him. If it was that easy, the biggest, strongest guy would be good. But you have to have awareness. You have to have some flexibility. It'll be interesting to see how Evan Neal does there. But he was at left guard. Notable, no doubt. And this has kind of been in the works for months. When I first heard, and I reported that Evan Neal was essentially making the move to guard months ago out of the combine, the talk was, to me at least, was that the preference was to put him at left guard. And the reason for that was if you're putting him in a new position, you want him next to your best offensive lineman in Andrew Thomas. So why not? And also he played left guard in college. So that was the ideal spot. Now he'll probably move around a little bit. You have to have some flexibility, versatility, especially if you're a backup guard. Because right now the starters are at guard are John Runyon Jr. at left guard. He did some individual drills, didn't do any team drills. And Greg Van Roten at right guard. Now, if Evan Neal somehow makes it into the lineup, John Runyon would then probably flip to the right side. Evan Neal would stay on that left side. And Runyon's played both sides. He started camp last year on one side, ended on the other side. So he could do both. I think he would prefer to stay on the left. But we'll see. Now, we're a long way away from that happening. Because Evan Neal is moving after an unsuccessful stint. And that's being nice right there. At right tackle. He's moving to left guard. The Giants aren't just going to put him in with the first team. He's not even in with the second team. Oh, he was, but he's not even the second option. Because Aaron Stinney is still ahead of him. So Aaron Stinney was getting first team reps at left guard because John Runyon Jr. was off to the side. He had an off-season procedure, I believe. He remember he had that injury late last year, missed late in the season. So he's coming back from injury, so they're bringing him along slowly. So Aaron Stinney's still getting the first team reps at left guard right now, ahead of Evan Neal. And then Greg Van Roten on the right side, John Michael Schmidt at center. Andrew Thomas wasn't in either. James Hudson Jr. came over from the Browns, was the first team left tackle, and Jermaine Illuminor was the right tackle. Now, James Hudson Jr. just looked weird because number 55 at left tackle, you're like, 55? Oh, 55? Doesn't seem like a left tackle number. But you're seeing number 55 out there, you're like, who is that? First I thought it was Marcus Bowe. Marcus Bowe's playing with the second, third team, playing some right tackle, mostly right tackle. Saw him, I believe, slip in there as a left tackle as well. So he's going to get some swing tackle reps, essentially. But I think the Giants look at it as, hey, he could be our future right tackle. Remember, Jermaine Illuminor, I believe, is on the final year of his deal. So their future at right tackle is uncertain. See what you have with Marcus Bowe there. That's the offensive line situation. Oh, Josh Azudu also playing tackle still. That's me scratching my head. I don't get it. I just don't get it. They showed last year. They showed the last 2 years. They have no confidence in him long term at tackle. They put him in a tackle. They went and signed some guy off the 49ers practice squad to put in above him. After one game. He had a rough first half, played better in the second half. One game, and they pulled the plug on that experiment. And now he's back there? They botched Josh Zudu's Giants career like no other. Gets injured the first year, when he probably should have been sitting out in the preseason. Should be playing guard. Didn't win the guard spot. They put him at tackle. They don't have confidence in him at tackle. They just threw him right in there in the middle of a game. Put him at tackle last year. They had no confidence in him again after one game. Pulled him out. Like, what a disaster that's been. 3rd round pick, by the way, out of North Carolina, where most teams viewed him as a guard, which is part of the mind-numbing part of the whole thing. As far as the Giants' defense, again, like I said, the line part of it, no judgments, no pads, no live full contact, mostly a passing camp. So the linebackers, 2 middle inside linebackers were first team were Bobby Okereke, Micah McFadden. Micah McFadden looked good out there. Pass coverage, had that interception, had a couple plays. At cornerback, Paulson Adebo. This was actually interesting to me. Paulson Adebo's out there in live drills. Guy broke his leg last year. I thought, bring him along slowly in the spring. We'll probably see him training camp, get out there in live drills. No, Paulson Adebo, who Giants signed as a free agent from the New Orleans Saints, is going to be probably their number 1 cornerback, is out there after breaking his leg, what was it, October, November of last year? So a little surprised to see him out there. He seemed to be moving well. The other side is Deonte Banks. We'll see what those guys have moving forward. Didn't have anything that stood out too much there. Javon Holland, wearing single digits, number 8, definitely stood out to me. Seemed to be all over the field at times. I'm intrigued to see what the Giants have with him, and you'll have to get used to it. Tyler Nubin is now 27, which Jason Pinnock was last year in that same spot. So when you see him at first, you're like, oh, Jason Pinnock. No, that's Tyler Nubin now, who obviously were 31 as a rookie. So that seems to be a pretty versatile, athletic safety duo that I think Shane Bowen can do some stuff with. Abdul Carter, Bobby Okereke's evaluation told him, looks quick out there. Like, just explosiveness. He's a different kind of beast. I think he's going to be a star in this league. Saw him in some different spots. A little taste of that, right? Inside, outside. At linebacker, I think that's what we're going to see with Abdul Carter here, especially his rookie year. Using him in certain packages. Get him in there as much as possible with Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. So that's the initial evaluation, or the initial what's the word I'm looking for, because you're not really evaluating. There really wasn't a ton to evaluate from Abdul Carter there. It's the initial observation instead of evaluation. Observation is probably a better word. Just seeing where he's at, where he's playing, how he moves, how he stacks up against other guys, right? Higher level of competition. But, yeah, all signs point to that guy being a stud. Punt return. Mir Smith-Marset taking punt returns. After him, though, was Dante Miller, the little explosive jitterbug type running back. To me, he was one of the more impressive players on the field, again, passing camp. So that speed, ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, he looks good to me. He looks like he's a guy who can contribute. I mean, even last year, he was a guy like, you know what? Maybe they can find a place for him. I was surprised at some point this last season they didn't really find the place for Dante Miller. He's a guy to keep an eye on throughout the summer. D. Williams, cornerback, and Montrell Washington were the other 2 guys that I noted were catching punts originally. But again, first OTA that we saw, OTA number 2 of the summer, nothing crazy, no crazy observation, evaluation should be made about it, but we did get an idea of where guys are on the field and are on the depth chart. It does change, though. These things will change. There will be some players who make their mark and work their way up. Right? Maybe Evan Neal shows, you know what? They see Evan Neal like, you know what? We think he could be a good guard. We need to get him in with the first team at times, especially if John Runyon Jr. is going to be sitting out, ahead of Aaron Stinney. But slow and steady here in the spring, even with the quarterbacks, Jaxson, Dart. Get him a few snaps here or there. Like that seems to be the plan. And you know what? We'll talk about the QB plan in a minute. On to the next one.